It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hey, it's Ivy Slater with Her Success Story. Thanks for joining me today. I was getting a lot of questions and comments on this process of writing a book, and I just spent about 4 days away with a client who's a writer, editor, has a publishing company, and who really helped me write what is going to be my next book out hopefully later this year, all goes well. So got a lot of questions around it. And I thought I would do a content episode on the process, the philosophy, and the why around it. So starting off with the why did I write my first book and why am I writing my next book? You know, writing a book is all about a piece in the marketing activity category. Marketing activities come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Marketing activities, for years I sold printing, print material, or doing postcards, catalogs, magazine advertising, newspaper, billboard, all pocket folders, everything, so much we did is a form of marketing. Television and advertising on TV, on all your radio shows, etc., a form of marketing. Social media, we have LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and a variety of other platforms, also all forms of marketing. One of the forms of marketing I use very much is speaking. I speak in front of a lot of audiences, and in doing that, it really helped to elevate my speaking platform as being a published author. So I said, okay, what if we look at it that way? As well as people are interested in knowing more about me and my marketing and what I do, it's a great introduction. So I use my first book, Conquering Your Fear of Money, A Woman's Guide to Business Success, as a piece of my marketing material. I felt Conquer Your Fear of Money was done in 2014, and I felt it was time, as businesses evolve, I have evolved, and it was time for another book. And I just made a decision, 2018 is the year I'm going to do it. So I knew I wanted to add it to my marketing repertoire. And I just made that decisive, clear decision of 2018, I'm going to get out book number 2. Literally book number 1 came out in July of 2014. So I thought that was fair. It will probably be about 4+ years between the books. With that, the first thing I did when I went to say, okay, I'm going to write a book. What do I want to write about? So I have my purpose. It's adding to the marketing repertoire. Adding to the speaking platform. As a speaker, it supports me to have a book out there, to have a current book out there. In doing that, I continue to look forward. Next, I said, what do I want to write about? And why do I want to write about it? Well, do I want to actually create a second edition of Conquering Your Fear of Money, or is there something else I want to do? So I took a side step and I looked at that and I said, you know what? I want more than what we offered in Conquer, or what I refer to as Conquering Your Fear of Money, or Conquer for short. And what does that look like? What does business today for me look like? And I said, in the years I've been doing and running Slater Success as the CEO, I've worked with many, many different entrepreneurs, business owners, corporate leaders, executives, in a variety of fashions. What are the themes that have gone through that? And I said, well, one theme is going back to my background as a dancer. There's just foundation steps. And I said, well, what if I do the parallels to the foundation steps of dance and the foundation steps of business? I was like, well, that's interesting to me. Would anybody else be interested in it? Interestingly enough, when we started talking about it and developing this concept and this idea, I said, well, I'm sitting and watching, you know, my husband watched some masters in golf. And I was like, well, every day they go out and they hit X amount of balls. They also keep in massive shape. Then we were watching a tennis match and I noticed Serena Williams and I was like, well, you know, watching some documentaries of coming back of having her child, she's training, she's hitting, you know, forehands and backhands, and that's what they do every day. Well, that's the same as business. So it doesn't matter if you're talking dance, if you're talking tennis, if you're talking soccer, as we recently watched the World Cup. It's all the same. If we look at a musician, I have a client who's a great businesswoman who used to be a musician. And so I sat down and talked to her. And she goes, same thing, Ivy. You know, you play your scales, you work your voice. An artist might start with a still, right? Still lives before, you know, takes years to advance, right? To start drawing and perfecting the human body. I had one of my dear friends was an artist while we were in college together and still is an artist. So in looking at this, I said, well, this is actually kind of interesting. What if I ran with it? So I took it to my client and I said, what do you think of this concept? Test marketed it, spoke to a lot of people, decided to run with it. And I was like, okay, so I'm good. Now what happens next? They said, we need to create an outline of the book. And, you know, Leah, who has helped guide me through this, said, well, before we do that, she showed up with storyboards. And she said, well, let's brainstorm this as opposed to doing it logically. She goes, you're about to do a very logical approach. I want to approach it as a creative. I was like, oh my God, you're making my heart tickle pink. So we approached it as a creative with just a brainstorm on many, many different Post-it notes. Went back, categorized the Post-it notes in the brainstorm, and it's like all of a sudden, an outline made sense. As opposed to us creating it from logic, we created it from a place of creativity and expansion. So when we sat down to write for 10 hours, 4 days, you know, so we did about 40 hours that cultivated in 16 hours of hardcore content that will now be, you know, revised and transcribed and come into a book form next, with the writing around it. It was an understanding. Leah used a great, for those of you who you could check out on Ivy Slater's Facebook page, on my Facebook page, and on Slater Success Coaching, we posted 4 Facebook Live videos and we talked about the characters. And I was like, what do you mean characters? She goes, well, all the people in your stories are characters in our book. And I was like, wow, I had never seen it or thought about it in that way. So it brought a lot to light. The process is going to be an ongoing process. The next thing I was assigned to was find out who was going to read my book for me. I said, well, I'm going to read the book once we have the first draft. I'm going to do the first read. And Leah said, no, you're not. She goes, you're way too in this to look at this as the first draft objectively. I want some outside eyes. So we chose somebody on my team who's worked with me for about 4 years, helps us with our copy editing and all our social media content, does a lot of support on the podcast on her success story, and she's going to do a read through. You know, and a friend of mine who's also a writer and editor has known me as a businesswoman, has known me as just a good old-fashioned girlfriend, has been in some of my programs, attended and supported retreats, so knows my content well. She's going to be one of our readers. And so, again, the organization, so it's the combination of the organization and allowing yourself the creative process simultaneously. It brought me back. Leah and I were talking in the day one. I said, you know, my favorite retreat was a retreat I ran for my clients about creativity and structure, the 2 complements of great business. And I said, this process is reminding me of it. And she said, you're 1,000% on. It's the side of the brain that's the creative side with the structured side. And Leah had asked me early on, she goes, you know, your first book is very factual, very tactile, very systems, very clear in methodology. Are you willing to go deeper, be a little bit more vulnerable? And it, honest to God, scared the crap out of me when I said yes to this. But I think it's important that I did. So you'll stay tuned as the book number 2 continues to develop. I'm going to keep you guys posted. So, of course, remember to subscribe to her success story. Leave a comment of what you want to know so we can actually give this to you. When you ask for things, you will receive things. As well as check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and all your social media channels. And you too can stay tuned on the process of writing this book. Thanks for joining me here today, and we'll talk soon.